Welcome to the Korea Pro podcast. I'm your host, Jeongmin Kim, the editorial director of Korea Pro.
And I'm John Lee, the editor of Korea Pro.
Join us for a weekly 15-minute conversation as we dive into the most pressing stories shaping South Korea and dissect the most complicated ones for you.
From politics to culture, technology to society, we've got you covered. So stay ahead of the curve and never be sidelined again.
So get ready for a fresh perspective on South Korea's news. This is the Korea Pro podcast.
All right, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Korea Pro podcast. It is October 2nd, Wednesday. We are recording a little early than we usually do. Now, before we go on, once again, I'm asking all the listeners out there that if you have any topics that you'd like us to handle, send us an email to podcast@koreapro.org. All right, Jeongmin, kick us off, please. A lot of things have happened this week.
Well, there was a brief moment of freakout, at least I did, earlier this week. Was it this week?
It was last week on Friday.
There was a moment of an hour or so sort of freak out, at least for me, seeing Takaichi won the first round for the Japanese election.
You are, of course, referring to the elections in the Japanese ruling party, the LDP. And yeah, there was a fear of Sanae Takaichi potentially winning and becoming the LDP president, which would have made her prime minister, but it did not turn out that way. Now, could you explain to us why you were freaking out?
Well, just to walk you through it just a little more, Koizumi, he didn't make another candidate. He didn't make the cut in the first round. So the final round was Ishiba and Takaichi. And Takaichi, she is considered very hawkish from South Koreans' point of view when it comes to bilateral relations, especially because she announced that if she becomes a prime minister, she will visit the Yasukuni shrine officially as a prime minister status, not as just a personal level visit.
Well, to be fair, she wasn't just considered hawkish by South Koreans. So did the Japanese and definitely the Chinese as well.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, there was a lot of concern that had she won, it would have reversed a lot of the progress that had been made between President Yoon Suk-yeol and now former Prime Minister Fumio Kishida to improve their ties. Because as you just mentioned, visiting Yasukuni would have thrown cold water at the whole process. But Shigeru Ishiba, as it turns out, he won the presidential election within the party and then became prime minister.
Now, all I'm thinking about whenever I hear his name is that he loves the small ship models and everything.
Train models as well.
Right. Nikkei Asia, I think, said that he's a proud otaku making these things, and I love it. I saw him wearing the Mario outfit once as well. Aside from that, why is he a better choice from South Koreans' point of view?
Well, there's quite a bit of reservation as to how much progress there will be under Ishiba's administration, but he is still considered preferable to Takaichi because Ishiba had said several times in the past that Japan had to take on a more reflective view of its own militaristic past. Back in 2019, when the South Korean government under the Moon administration was saying that they were going to withdraw South Korea from the GSOMIA, the intel sharing pact with Japan, there was a lot of people within Japan who was saying that South Korea was making the wrong move. In fact, the current foreign minister, who was the defense minister at the time, was saying that South Korea was making a grave mistake by withdrawing from GSOMIA. But Ishiba at the time was the one person who was saying, we have to remember that South Korea is making this decision based on our shared history, and the Japanese people should be more understanding of South Korea.
Mm-hmm.
And so because of the kind of stances that he has taken in the past, he's considered a dove within the conservative Liberal Democratic Party. But of course, that being said, even though he's prime minister now, he still has a deal with those same conservative factions who make up the LDP. And so
it's more than just a personal view now.
It's not a dictatorship. It's a democracy. And he's going to have to deal with all of those different people in his own party who are not going to have the same thoughts as he does. And so quite a few experts were saying that they don't think relations will improve all that much under Ishiba, but they will not deteriorate as much had Takaichi won.
It's just less risk compared to the situation where Takaichi might have won.
Exactly.
And how about Koizumi? What happened to him?
Koizumi, as it turns out, well, his father was Junichiro Koizumi, a former prime minister, and there was a lot of hope that he would be part of the young generation to lead the party. But he made a very grave mistake. And the mistake that he made, of course...
Political mistake, you mean?
A really terrible political, social, every kind of mistake. And that's because he made the mistake of saying that when Japanese men and women get married, he was saying that women should be allowed to keep their own last names, which is a practice that is very common here in Korea.
But for different reasons. In Korea, we keep our name not because we are progressive, it's because women are not allowed to be included into the family officially.
Well, if you're going to say that, potato. But yes, for very different reasons, and not very progressive ones, South Korean women are allowed to keep their last names even after marriage. But that's not been the case in Japan. In Japan, women had to change their last names to their husbands. But when Koizumi said, hey, let's allow women to keep their own last names, a lot of people said, that's a step too far for us. And so he did not make it to the runoff.
And Japanese politicians and the party members, they're very, very old.
Very old and very male, and which is why, while you were freaking out about Takaichi potentially winning, I was thinking, no, they're going to go for the man.
That didn't cross my mind, actually.
Whether we're talking about
She has a very long career.
She does, but whether we're talking about Japan or South Korea, we are still dealing with old men who are very set in their ways.
There were the highlights of the week were actually defense and security related. Let's start with what happened in Israel.
Okay, so as everyone who's been paying attention knows, this has been a long time happening. It doesn't only stretch back to October 7th last year. It goes back many, many years and is a very convoluted and long history, which we will not get into. But what happened yesterday was that Iran had launched ballistic missiles into Israel. So far, at least since April, Iran has not directly attacked Israel. It has only been its proxies, the Hezbollah militia, Hamas in the Palestinian territories, and as well as the Houthis in Yemen.
So it wasn't a state-to-state sort of deal.
Except for once in April. But except for that one time, yesterday was the first time since then that Iran directly attacked Israel with its ballistic missiles. Now, we might have seen those video footages of Israel's Iron Dome system intercepting a lot of these missiles. But the missiles that Iran fired last night, they were not, slow, small-sized rockets that were fired from short range. These were actual ballistic missiles. Now, according to the U.S. Department of Defense, they said that they worked along with Israel and they were able to shoot down, intercept the majority of the incoming missiles. They were able to use the Iron Dome system as well as Israel's Arrow 2 and Arrow 3.
Can you briefly explain what these two systems are?
The Iron Dome system, as we all know, is what's used for these short-range rockets. But the Arrow 2 and Arrow 3 systems are their missile defense systems. But of course, missile defense or Iron Dome or whatever we want to calling it, there's no missile defense system in the world that is 100% perfect. There were some missiles that actually hit their targets, but according to the DoD, the majority of them were intercepted.
So what are the implications for South Korea regarding this? Because as far as I know, South Korean defense white paper, defense budget sheets, everything, they always mention Iron Dome, saying that, we will have a Korean-style Iron Dome soon, a multi-layered defense system linking it to the KAMD, Korea Air and Missile Defense System, and KAMD, Korea Air and Missile Defense System.
Well, South Korea has been using American systems for a long time. The Patriot missiles, the THAAD system, and now we've got LSAM and MSAM, and the LSAM-2 is under development right now. These are the domestic missile defense systems.
Which are supposed to complement the American versions.
Which will be complementing the American systems, not replacing them. But regardless of which kind of systems that we're talking about, missile defense is always much more expensive than actual ballistic missiles. Several times more. And so what we saw happening in Israel last night, the Iranians knew exactly what kind of systems that the Israelis were using. And so they fired about around 200 rounds. And so this is what we call saturation. And so no matter how great your missile defense system is, all it takes is just to miss one or two and they'll still hit their targets. But of course, in South Korea, we're dealing with a nuclear-armed adversary. So if we miss one or two missiles and they happen to be carrying nuclear warheads, that's going to be devastating. And so that is going to have a lot of implication for South Korea because we have to talk about, cost effectiveness. how much money are we willing to invest in all of these different missile defense systems that might not be 100% proof, which even if it's 99% effective, it could still be very destructive. Are we making the right decisions by investing all of this money on this defense system when a lot of the money could potentially go elsewhere?
Devil's advocate, isn't that why South Korea and the U.S. are focusing a lot on the second strike, like the deterrence itself, so that the North Koreans do not attempt at all at firing anything?
Sure, you're talking about kill chain,
yes.
Of course. So that
kill chain is preemptively, and also attack, KMPR, which is afterward.
Which is going to happen afterward, exactly. And so, yes, there are these different systems in place in Korea, which is part of the three-axis system, of course, as the name suggests. And so, yes, a lot of money is also being spent in those areas as well. But the question is, should we bother spending much more on missile defense than we already have? Now, yes, it's better to have a missile defense system than to not have one at all. But we already have a rather pretty robust and solid system in place. Should we be investing more in KAMD instead of, shouldn't we spend that money more on the KMPR part of the kill chain?
And in relations to that, it seems that South Korea and the U.S. are actually thinking that it might be a wiser decision to spend more, invest more in developing and producing assets related to the third axis, which is the Korea Massive. It's a stupid, weird name, but Korea Massive Retaliation and Punishment and Retaliation. And it seems the latest and the strongest asset related to that part is Hyunmoo 5.
Which we saw in the parade, not in the Gwanghwamun, but during the morning part of the event.
Just walking you through it quickly in case you missed it. October 1st is the Armed Forces Day. It's not technically public holiday, but this year it was temporary public holiday so that the citizens can enjoy whatever was going on in Seoul. The morning part kicked off with President Yoon Suk-yeol inspecting the military, the salutes on the open roof car going around the Seoul Airport airfield. They conducted that last year as well, but it changed slightly. But the star of the show, there were two stars of the show, both related to the KMPR. One was Hyunmoo 5, which is nicknamed the monster missile because reportedly it has 8-ton payload for the warhead. One of the biggest in the world, South Korea says. And it's a bunker buster. So it's supposed to be able to target and strike the North Korean leadership. So they rolled it out, actually. It was just developed, completed development last year.
Well, to be fair, we didn't actually see the missile. We saw a metal tube where the missile was supposedly inside.
Right, and this is like classified among the classified. So this was very fun to see, although we sort of expected they wouldn't show the whole thing. The specifications are still all secret. The range, the maximum apogee, how strong is it, or what kind of engine they're using. Although there are speculations about the solid fuel and everything.
We did see the launch vehicle, though. That was quite impressive to see.
Nine axle.
Yes.
Very big. Smaller than the biggest North Korean one. But so the military review part, in the North Korean versions, it usually ends with the grand music and the slow rollout sort of thing with the biggest ICBM that they have. In the South Korean version, they did that with Hyunmoo 5, like slow rollout of Hyunmoo 5, everybody saluting. And that was interesting. And the other one was B-1B Lancer at a South Korea military review. It was for the first time.
The first time a nuclear-capable U.S. Plane actually took part.
So the messaging was pretty clear that whatever missiles you have, North Korea, you shouldn't fire any at us because we have these assets that can basically devastate you, was the messaging, the KMPR.
Right, exactly.
Just to add slightly to non-North Korea related bits from the military review and the street march as well from Sungnaemun to Gwanghwamun, there were a lot of drones that were being rolled out and also a lot of guided missiles, bombs that I love.
We promise that Jeongmin is not a warmonger.
There were Slamior and JDAM that were appearing publicly. That was very interesting.
Which are not usually displayed in public.
Right, and they were rolled out at the same time. And there were submergibles as well.
The Yellow Submarine. Which
Yellow
made
Submarine
us think of the
ones.
Beatles.
Right, and also the soldiers, we saw that there were not much goose stepping going on. If those were goose stepping, it was very bad goose stepping, but it turns out, reportedly, the instruction internally was that not to make the military review and the march look too totalitarian, they were asked to walk more casually.
I was also happy that this year we actually saw the fighter jets and the helicopters flying, which we did not see last year because of rain. And also, I was quite pleased that we did not have to see some guy walking around in a wetsuit and flippers.
Exactly.
Korea Pro, your definitive business intelligence resource for all things South Korea. Subscribe to our daily executive briefing on the most pressing issue of the day and a summary of key Korean and international news. Benefit from our analysts' original perspective on South Korea's economy, politics, security and society. The Monday Week Ahead newsletter helps you stay ahead of the curve for upcoming business and political events. Need to catch up? Our weekly podcast recaps recent developments. Trusted by leading corporations, government agencies and research institutions, Korea Pro delivers essential business intelligence daily. Stay ahead in South Korea's rapidly evolving environment. Visit koreapro.org/podcast. Korea Pro, never be sidelined again.
Week ahead, it seems that the First Lady scandal-related court case sort of ended.
The prosecutors decided not to go ahead with any more further investigations.
And the First Lady also appeared publicly on the Armed Forces Day as well. South Korean president is still suffering with low approval rate. It seems that it's going to continue for the time being.
I don't think that number is going to go up ever again.
Right. And also the apparent beef or soured relations between President Yoon and the leader of the ruling party, Han Dong-un, it's rumor, but it continues because he keeps not getting invited to small banquets and luncheons and everything.
He keeps snubbing Han Dong-un, exactly. So that keeps feeding into the rumors.
Right. And also, most importantly, the budget discussion will dominate the National Assembly next week and coming weeks until
the end of December. And for more of this information, we are going to send this to you in your email by Monday afternoon. So if you'd like to know more, please subscribe and have a great weekend.
And that's a wrap. Thanks for tuning in.
If you want to know more, sign up for our daily executive briefings. We brief you on all you need to know from the past 24 hours and why they matter every morning in your inboxes.
Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast for your weekly dose of insight. And until next time, I'm Jeongmin Kim.
And I'm John Lei. Stay connected, stay informed, and we'll see you next time on the Korea Pro Podcast.